So before we continue creating the surfaces, maybe we should double check if our profiles are actually correct. So I took some reference photos of this hairdryer, and while we measured certain elements or distances and diameters with a caliper, we put the wireframe together, kind of like guessing where everything is. And we can clearly see that there's a difference between just the handle and my upper area. The rest seems to be close. The problem is when we take a photo of this one, if I open this, it's actually prospectively foreshortened. So here this arcs obviously, and here we can see a little bit of the sides, so it's not like a very good orthographic view. However, we can still use this a little bit to help us get at least this layout a little bit more accurate. So we can load this image into the background. And I have this one here. It's called Site. It's inside the lecture demo files hairdryer reference photos. There you can find it online. And I know I have to scale this one down to 23 centimeters. I think this has to slowly go down. You can use Shift to adjust smaller steps. And this one has to go to here. There, maybe 9.4. Okay, maybe something like this. Let's see, 22 centimeters. Nah, this is too small, and 24 centimeters, this is too big. So maybe roughly 23 centimeters can be it what we have, maybe 22.5. Yeah. Let's go with 23. Perfect. Okay, we can check the left and the right line up again. This is a photo. This is not going to be usable as an orthographic side view. So we can't, or we shouldn't perfectly follow it. But we can extract a little bit of information from it. So let's take a look at the handle what we have. By accident, I just built this one actually, nearly the way how it is also created on the product with this arc, perfectly matching it. That was just pure luck. But now we can see that my handle is totally off. Okay, so what we can do is maybe we can select those and rotate them all together a little bit. Maybe move them to there. Okay, and then we can see, hey, it looks like elements are a little bit rotated. This is a little bit arced, this is arced. So before I adjust actually those, maybe what I can do is, this uses a mirror function right now, and that doesn't make any sense. So I will click apply and actually start adjusting those by hand. There, maybe this one to there, and this one to there. Trying to get something that looks close to what we have here. Okay, let's say like this. Here we have to guess a little bit because part of the handle we don't really see. And I will leave this one there. It just flows this direction nicely. Here is actually a rounded edge, but I just want only this edge running across that profile. Okay, good. The button here, this one we can rotate, and this will be roughly here, plus minus. Okay. So now we can take a look at maybe the profiles, and let's say down here I will maybe turn this one on so I can see these points go into local mode. and then just push these points in all at the same time till it lines up, for example. There, and maybe there. Okay, but before I continue, let's go back to our reference photos. There's another thing I would like to show you. There. Now we can actually see that the front area is wider and to the back it gets pinched. So how can we create kind of like this type of a shape? Well, let's see. We just scale those together and there it is. And you see, that's the way how we can do it. Okay, good. Problem solved. So here as well, we try to make sure this lines up. Maybe a little bit closer. Whoops, do this with both. And now we can scale this as well. Okay. Let's take a look at this one. I will put this to here, and this has to go to there, S and Y. I'm overbuilding, so I'm making this bigger because, well, we have to extrude this one later into the body of our handle, top part of the hair dryer. So this is not going to be the last profile, but after this later we can extrude this one up a little bit more. Okay, so let's maybe check all these profiles, make a top look, and we can see this definitely is smaller, this is bigger, this gets smaller. Okay, maybe this is good. So now we have some of the profiles nicely refined. Let's take a look at what we have here, and this is basically a circle. This is, I measured this correctly, so this photo is a little bit inaccurate, but we can see that this product line does not line up with the outer surface of the left body. There's kind of like an offset surface. So maybe what we could do is to do a little bit more accurate. We can move this one maybe down a little bit. So let's see now what we can do next. Well, maybe let's take a look at how we can, for example, surface the two main components. So the upper area and the handle. So the handle is going to be pretty easy. I can select these three profiles, Shift D, make a copy, escape, and maybe move this all to layer 6, so it's on a different layer. Then I go to layer 6. Okay. Now I can in the toolbar press join or Control J. That basically takes all the mesh of the three objects and joins them into the active object. Let's do this. And the reason why I did this was you can see this object has actually a rotation. So when I now go into edit mode and then I start lofting all these parts together, I can later move all these cross sections along the local orientation, which is pretty great. Okay, so how do I loft? Well, number 1, number 2, number 3, I can select, press spacebar and type in bridge. And there it is. Maybe spacebar and shade smooth. And it has the correct orientation. Okay, so we see the top area is not long enough, so we can select just the 4 top points, press E and escape, and then along local space we just extend it a little bit inwards. Perfect. Now we go closer, you can see where we placed the profiles and where the surface got generated, or how the surface got generated does not really match what I need. Here this doesn't match, and here it doesn't match, and here it doesn't match. So maybe we can select this profile only. Move it down a little bit. Maybe move it a little bit to there, so this matches up. You see, then slowly, even there, it will start lining up. And now we might have, or we can actually look at this. So select everything here, press E, and for example, move it down. And then we can try to scale it down a little bit more. But the opening for the cable is going to be a circle, so this is not what I will do. We have currently here 4 points, so this is not necessarily ideal to make a circular shape. 6, 8 is better, but for our current situation, let's say that is sufficient with 4 points. But I want this opening to be at the same rotation as those parts, so I will not in edit mode move my 3D cursor to there and then add a plane and rotate it by hand. I can, for example, copy this rotation, then Shift A, make a plane. I can scale this one down in object mode. Then I rotate this one so it has the exact orientation, and then I join these two back together there. And now this I can, for example, scale till it looks like I'm hitting somewhat maybe the opening for the cable area. Okay, good. So what's the next step I could do? Well, I could select this one and I could select these two 4 points and then press spacebar, bridge, try to bridge it, but this is maybe too soft. So let's take a look at the options we have. Maybe 1 or 2 cuts, blend surface. Yeah, and that doesn't really work very well. So we just go with 0 cuts. Okay. So how do we get the same detail? Well, I just need by hand to insert another loop cut here. For the moment, let's check actually how our polygon system looks like there. Okay, so I know this one. Where's my setting for to select through? Yeah, so this one I want to turn on. Also, let's move this one to the top. So this one will go down to there. So you see I have to bring this point closer to there. So I could sharpen this one. And you see on the right side, that's actually pretty close. So maybe this one a little bit to there, this one to there. And again, you know, this is just an overlay over a product photo, so this is not correct. Shade smooth. And this is bad here, the face is flipped, so AA, and then spacebar, recalculate normals, no, okay, or normal, make normal consistent, Control N. There we are. Okay, this actually looks like, based on how I sculpted everything, this is also too big, so let's make this a tick smaller. There. Yeah. Okay, see, it's a beautiful rounding. This is actually very difficult to do those caps with pure NURBS geometry. So we'll see when we bring this handle later over into Fusion, sculpting it this way is very productive compared to trying to surface it accurately the traditional way with just splines and then surfaces. Okay, good. I would say the handle maybe is accurate. This one we could make it a little bit more narrow, so we have a little bit more of kind of like a flow. The background image I will only set to front. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, let's keep this one maybe. So let's take a look at the top area, and there are multiple ways how, or 2 ways how we can build this. And let me show you number 1. So we have this ring, for example. Shift D, make a copy, escape, go into edit mode, and then I simply extrude along X, maybe scale this up, extrude along X, I pressed X, and now there I can see this has to be bigger. Okay, extrude along X. This now should be as big as the ring. And here now comes the really tricky part. How do I finish actually the circle there? So one way could be E, and there, and maybe another E, bring it even closer there, and another E to there. And I will get this very close. I just keep it a little bit open. So you see, works to a certain degree, but what I need to do now is even out all the position of these points. So in this case now turning the projection of the cage onto the surface on makes sense, because I can easily see actually how everything will deform. Also in wireframe mode really helps. So I'm getting a little bit closer, but I hit the point, but I have this gap here, so I need to bring this a little bit over, and this can be a little bit smaller, this can be a little bit bigger, and this area here is becoming really a problem. So whenever you want to create a sphere, at least the last and then the next loop has to be tangent. So what does it mean? Let's go back to low polygon mode. Control R, make a loop cut, and now I just scale this loop cut away, so that actually these lines are tangent to these lines. This line is tangent to this line. And if we zoom in and make this really tiny there, and now we rotate around, you can see it starts to look more like a sphere a little bit. It's not perfect. You can clearly see that there are some issues with it. So there's a little dip here, right in there. If I zoom in a little bit more, you can see something is not super circular. But for the sculpting part, what we do here right now, let's say this is sufficient. Because the trick is now trying to figure out how big does this have to be. When we make it too big, well, obviously we get something like this. So you want it to be also not too small, because then it starts to look like being a pinched surface. So maybe like this. This also will require that maybe this additional surface, GG, we can bring a little bit closer and then scale. Sorry, my voice is breaking. Bring this a little bit closer and then scale till maybe we get something that starts to look good. Maybe a little bit bigger. Okay, display, no, shading. I always mess this up. Let's go to there. We can see it even better. There's some stuff happening, but it's fine. We can fix this later anyway. So this is also a very difficult shape to do, like a nice circular part. So that was kind of like one way how to do this. Let me show you a second way. So 12 points. Shift A and then UV sphere, and let's take a look. So we have segments. I would like to have segments 12. Yeah, that was correct. And rings 16, 12. Yeah, let's do it this way. And this is way too big. So let's scale this one down. Okay, good. Shouldn't have done it this way. I should have done this actually with this one being centered. So I can select this circle again. Really nice aspect of having those loop cuts. Sorry, the wireframe. So I can position my circle there. Then I go back, sphere, and then in edit mode, scale this down. This has to be rotated 90 degrees, and you see now there, I have actually a set of points. Let's see how this one will work. All this I can dump because I don't need it. And here I will select all those and remove it. And then I can join the half sphere to the original object. And then I only need between there and there bridge. So I loft the missing surface, AA, Control N, spacebar, shade smooth. Okay, and let's take a look at how this works with the sub D turned on. And this is closer, but because we use a UV sphere, you see you get a different issue. There's a pinching, and that's because here we have triangles, and that's not very good. But what we can do is cursor to selection, and then this point we delete. Select this opening, E to extrude, escape, S and 0, and then we say move selection to the cursor. Let's take a look. Now see, then we have this pinch thing again. Really annoying. So let's see. I know I need to have a little bit of a tangent loop around it. So I GG scaled it down. And then now I can maybe try to scale this further apart. Let's see. No, it doesn't do it. Okay, well, let's do it one more time. Delete this one here. Extrude, escape, and simply scale. E, extrude, escape, S, and 0. So now this is kind of like this flat area we need. Let's turn this one on and maybe see when and how far can I push it to maybe get this spherical shape. So I have to again be a little bit creative with doing this. And it looks like this actually works pretty nice. However, as you can see, this whole thing doesn't really fit the shape, so I might have to select all this and then press S and scale this up. And then also from here I might have to push this over to there. Okay, S and X, maybe a little bit compressing it. Till I can force it into that circular wireframe outline. Okay, so that was basically one way now how to sculpt this body by lofting everything ourselves, or because this is a very geometrical shape, we later then create the shape and then blend between them. A second way we can create this upper body is, instead of lofting profiles or sections and then sculpting it, we can also create a side profile and then revolve it. So let me move this one to layer 7, and the modifier I will show you now is the screw modifier. And basically with this modifier you can do a revolve, but they call it screw modifier because it can also be used to create threading, which basically is a circular revolve multiple times and then you move it along a direction. But we can also use it for very simple tubical revolves. Okay, so make sure the 3D cursor is somewhere at least at the center. height-wise and from the front. Shift A, create a plane, edit mode, we can scale it down as much as needed. R and X in my case, because I want to rotate this plane. And then these 2 points I can select, switch to 3D cursor as Z0. You see I moved these 2 points up. And I can delete this edge, I don't need it anymore. And now I can select this point and, for example, roughly move it to there. These points I move to there, this point I move to there. Tangency I want to maintain, so this one will remain there. Maybe 1 point there. Let's subdivide this one, 1 point to there. Here another subdivide, a point to there. And this one maybe I snap to there. Okay, good. So this is just an outline, very basic. And now we can, for example, screw this. And the screw modifier gives you the ability to work with different axes. So for example, Z, which is selected, Y, and I want to have X because this is my X axis. Okay, this looks pretty good. We can set the steps maybe to 12. Why did I use 12? Well, because also here I have 12 vertices or 12 steps. So I try to create the surface here the same way. In case I later apply this geometry, then I have exactly the same amount of points. That's the main reason behind the 12. Good. We can also add a sub D, maybe 2, 3, okay. And now we can go ahead and actually in edit mode start seeing like how can we move everything so I can get kind of like that surface flow I'm looking for. This is way too high, so this has to go down. This one has to go maybe to there. This one maybe has to go to there. Maybe lower. Actually, with a point selected, Shift Control B. Yes, I can fillet that point. Basically, you see, I can add 1 or even more points. So I can on a line fillet this way, but I can actually, in our case here, use this technique to simply add more control points for me to work with. So again, Shift Control B when you have a point selected. So this has to go further down. You see here I start running into the same issue of trying to match everything so it lines up. And now what's going on here? See this? So because we work with points, the surface can be flipped. This is very easy to fix. Calculate surface, and in case it's blue, then click on flip. In my case, this is fine. Now the whole surface area is perfect. Okay, let's go back. A little bit more of sculpting, trying to line everything up. This one and there is okay. Actually, this is not okay. This has to go higher. And then maybe here and here. W, subdivide. Maybe to there, and then this one, for example, I push down a little bit because this gets a little bit flatter. Okay, perfect. So there's actually now my sphere. So you see I just created one very basic profile, and then we revolve it by using the screw modifier, and then the resulting blocky object we can then smooth out with the sub D modifier. So that's the second way how we can easily do this one. So what's the advantage of each one? They have also disadvantages. So since we're with this one, let's continue to see what we can do with this one quickly. Obviously, because I only work with a profile, I can really quickly just do stuff. I can select a point, move it around, and I don't have to select a loop, scale it, or whatever. I could also, let's say here we want to have maybe a structure, subdivide, but please maybe 1, 2, 3 there. So 1, 2, and 3, and this I can move down. Can quickly turn this into kind of like a ray gun or so with a metallic body. So for objects that I want to truly really only lathe, this is actually a really fast process. And I mean, in Fusion we will use something like this as well. When we make a profile and then revolve. So, but you see the advantage exploring such ideas with a polygonal model is how quickly I can also modify my profiles, because CAD is very precise, but with the precision comes also the labor, and this is not very precise, but we are making a concept model, so I can really explore ideas radically faster. And if I don't really like what I did, I can always select these points and say sayonara, here patch something in, and I'm back to the original one. So that's the advantage of the revolve. Let's take a look at the advantage of the loft. Well, if I want to do the same, see, I need to select this handle, and then maybe I have to turn on the move and the scale command, so I can scale and then I can move. But you see, I can only do one command at a time. I cannot do move and scale, kind of like with the revolve at the same time. But what I can do now are interesting other techniques. So you see this wave cut. Let's say I would like to build something. So I can add, for example, another loop cut here, there, then another loop cut there, and this one I scale down, and to make another loop cut and get it closer. Let's take a look, and then there we have already something that looks similar with built-in, sorry for the scrolling, fillets. Say the fillets we want to make sharper, so we add some more loop cuts there, and maybe this S and Shift X. I scale this smaller. Okay. So you could say, well, I could easily do the same points with the profile and then use a screw. That's true, but with the screw we cannot do this. I know I select those vertices and adjust them. And then here I select those vertices and move them back. And look at that. Now we have a nice transitional surface, nice and swooped. Let's say I would like to play a little bit more with the position where those are, so I can move this out a little bit. So I have this surface, maybe here, delete, delete, delete. Maybe I just want to have a small transition. Maybe a loop cut, move it out, but then actually I scale this only along one direction, not the other one. So there you see a lot of flexibility you have now, sculpting the surfaces based on the control points you have, because this is actually a lofted surface. So we have all the control points we can touch. Here in this case, we don't really have a surface we can touch. We only work with a profile. But later, let's say the profile and the surface is fine and we want to start sculpting. Can Shift D, make a copy, move this onto a different layer. And then we simply click apply. And now we have the surface and with all the control points to touch and model. There's one additional way how we could deal actually with sculpting this circular area, which is quite problematic, and that is by using a quad ball. So when we use a plane, just as a quick demo, I'm going to a top view and we add the sub D modifier. It looks nice and round, but if we really pay attention to the shape, you can see this is not really a circle. So let's plug in a circle, add a modifier and scale this one down, and there you see what's going on. Well, the circle here works really well. This looks like a CV circle, like a NURBS, because we have an insane amount of CVs. But here we only have 4. So that's the main problem. If, for example, we subdivide this one more time, and now we have quite a lot of points, which we could start adjusting in a way so we get close to something that works like a circle. There. See? So you need the amount of points. So what that means is basically we need to work with a specific geometry where also points are adjusted accordingly. And I would like to introduce you sorry, to the quad ball. So in the same folder there is now a file. So go import wavefront and hair dryer. There is the quad ball. If you import it, it's there. It is just huge. So scale this one down. And if we now take a look at it, there you can see we have plenty of CVs to describe a circle. If we add a sub D modifier and maybe level 3 or shift spacebar shade smooth, this looks like a pretty nice smooth surface. This is not a perfect sphere, but we can't really sculpt a perfect sphere or a perfect circle because those would be mathematically described, and you mainly have those like in Fusion when you create a cylinder or a circle or a sphere. These are perfect geometries, very good and necessary for creating, let's say, an axis or so. But for what we do here, we just need sphere-like surfaces. So this will be fine. Now this one we can scale up, or we could even, because let's say I go sub D6, so this should be 8 centimeters. Now I can actually adjust this one. It's not, how much is this one? Oh, 8.8, whoops, okay. So 8.8 centimeters, 8.8 centimeters, 8.8 centimeters, okay. So this should be close to the circle, it is. Now I can actually lower the resolution for the sub D to something less. You see the dimensions is off, but I know in Fusion later when we bring this in, it's very, very close to 8.8. Okay, so when we go into edit mode, you see there is the layout of points. How many points do we have here? Actually 8 instead of 12. You also notice at the end here is actually one loop cut, but it is not vertically aligned. It actually follows a certain structure to maintain a nice circular shape in the inside. So what can we do with this area? Well, this one, for example, we could delete. All those we can scale together, and then we extrude everything out. Scale it down, there. Boom, there we are. So that's basically the third way. By then we still use a geometrical primitive, but we use actually an optimized version. So the quad ball, which actually comes, I found this with T-splines, and this perfectly works also inside Blender. It's just an optimized cube that was subdivided one time, and then some CVs were so adjusted that you get a nice spherical shape. So let's take a look at how we can create this area to cut out. So I have this profile, and this is kind of like the furthest cut, and then there is a cut in the center. So basically that means this profile I will have left and far right, and in the center I will have another profile. So Shift D, move it over, select the center one, Shift D, escape, and I move everything to layer 2. So I can actually now select this one to this one at the center. Oh, where did I move this one to? That was the wrong position. Shift D and Y direction. That was funny. Okay. Also helps maybe to take a look at the handle. We can get this as close as possible. Okay, good. So this one, Shift select the center one, Control J to join them together, and we can go into edit mode, AA, spacebar, and bridge. Then we can also add a mirror modifier at the beginning along Y. Okay, good. This is fine. So these 2 points in the center I can now select and simply move to somewhere else. There. Maybe these points can get closer. These points can get closer. This point could go to there. This one maybe can go up a little bit. This can go down a little bit. There. And there. Okay. So now there we have a surface, spacebar, shade smooth. If we want, we can select all these points, Shift E1 and straighten it. So it's a nice patch. And this basically will be used, well, we select this one, go to Boolean modifier, difference, select this one. We can cut actually this area out. And there we are. You see, well, we have this surface actually removed. Alt B, let's make a section look, and there you can even see that. There's a normal handle, and then there is the cut surface. Alt B, go back to the normal view. Perfect. See, so that's kind of like how we can make that part of the handle area, which we will later refine in Fusion anyway. This is part of the handle, so I will put this, in my case, under my handle layer. Okay, good. So this one done. Let's take a look at the button. Button is quite interesting. I have also some additional photos here. Where is the button one? It's somewhere. Of course, the last one there. So design language, design consistency, what do we work with? Well, it's a very basic object, and the bottom area is rounded because the bottom part of my handle is rounded, but then I didn't do it on top. But to break it up, they made it more flat. And then these cavities here are basically generated by creating, again, these surfaces and cut it out. So we first build this bigger body, and then later we trim these areas out. Okay, so let's build it the same way. I know this roughly has to fit into this body. Let's maybe Shift D, Escape, M and 2, put this onto a different layer. Maybe turn on actually the handle so I can see it. So I can rotate this a little bit more. So for example, it matches the surface. Okay. Now this box actually is just a wireframe. It has no faces. So if I want to continue using this one, I might have to fill in some faces first. I will do this with the back because I want to work with a plane first. Okay, so let's go back to the photo. I need one loop cut along the center to create this arc. And then here loop cut, and here the center loop cut is pushed down. I need to loop cut here to get these sides straight. Okay, so 2 loop cuts there, and loop cut there. We set this one goes down. Let's add a sub D modifier. This goes a little bit up, but then it's actually tighter. So GG, and then let's move this down. Okay. Oh, pretty close. Looks like actually this tapers. So maybe here we can scale this a little bit, but I want this actually to be nice and even as a scale. So I can scale those, and then these points I will GG, and then GG, so it slides along that edge. So I maintain that this is on a line. Okay, let's say this is fine. This is actually round, so we can select everything, A, E to extrude, escape, and then maybe push this out. And let's take a look. Now this is rather flat, but it should be actually more roundish. Well, to make it more round, we actually have to select these points and move them up. There, start seeing this becomes round. Let's shade this smooth. I will switch to this for the moment, or even turn it off. It's inverted. AA, Control N. Yeah, now this works better. Okay. Maybe here at the bottom, for the moment, I sharpen this so it's a little bit easier to read. This is pretty steep, so this rather raises up. So I would say first all those can get closer, and probably all those have to go up. There we are. Okay. And those actually I moved up, and maybe what I want to do in addition, I can try to see, maybe these points I push inwards before and after. You see it moves nicer. Okay, and maybe this loop cut here I don't really need. What I will do is simply this. Maybe for the moment I will simply Shift E1 crease. Okay, and let's turn on auto smooth so we have a nice sharp edge, because we have a nice sharp edge there. Okay, good. Now this actually, let's say, is fine. And let's turn this one on, and we can bring this one back to see, yeah, it's looks pretty good. So you see also here we have to build it bigger, so when we insert it, the surface of the handle will nicely later trim everything off. Let me make a section view inside so there you can see it. So you overbuild the button or the interface element, and then you use the other surface and trim it later. So it's silly to try to build it so it perfectly follows the handle surface. Okay, good. So that works. Now we have actually these cuts. This one is rotated 13.69. So let's copy that rotation. Shift S, cursor at selected. No, wait, before we do that, Alt Control Shift C and say origin at geometry center there. Shift S, cursor to center, Shift A. Let's make it plane in edit mode, scale it down. Then we can rotate it. And in edit mode now, rotate 90 degrees. So now you see this plane kind of lines up with the side cut. And what we can do now is this one has to be pretty long. So go to there. Okay, how do we do the next stuff? This all should be nicely lined up. So I will try to maybe block it out this way. There will be a loop cut. This one I move up to there. This one goes to there. And then another loop cut. Control R to maybe there. Okay, so you might ask yourself, well, why did I do all this stuff? Control R. This is now a loop cut right at the center of this arc. And I can select this and this and press Y to disconnect it from the mesh, because now I can select this face and H hide it. See there, I can select this point and, for example, move it outwards. Alt H, select this edge, and then I can also maybe move this up, but everything here has to be moved down a little bit. Design consistency. You see, I tried to build everything geometrically the same. Now this and this I can round, so let's go and say mean bevel weight. Make sure scale is set to 1. Bevel only the weight areas a millimeter. I don't know if this even is enough. It seems to be okay. 10. Okay. 5. Good. Okay. Shade smooth. Okay, the way how I build it and the way how my model is are different, so now I have to adjust my model a little bit. So maybe all these points here, they have to move back, maybe to there. Let's see. Okay, and then here, this and this goes a little bit further out, and yeah, running into a little bit of an issue. You can see my button at the end where it curves, and this surface starts to intersect with my handle. So I might have to adjust the rotation a little bit. Let's rotate the button. Maybe move this out a little bit more. Yeah, okay. And this is better. So also again, proper naming. Button. And maybe we call this one trim button. Let's call this one handle. Okay, so Boolean modifier difference. This one. And let's hide this one. Doesn't work, unfortunately. So that's probably because it's just only a surface. Yeah. So we would have actually to cap this, but we can also use the curve library for this, and there it does the surface. If your object is very basic and very simplistic and you want to trim with a surface, then the curve works really, really fast as well. Okay, good. So now there you see, now we can kind of preview how this looks. Do we like it? Let's take a look there. So this is pretty wide, but my version is wider. So maybe what I need to do is, now what makes sense is to give this a wire view. So now I can take a look through the object, and maybe how do we do this? Yeah, we have to move this up a little bit there, and then maybe R and Y. I rotate this in a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, oh, we can maybe keep it this way. Good. So you see, also there was quite easy. Shade smooth. So this cuts nicely. Okay. So now we also have the kind of like a proxy object for our dial done. Okay.